summer internship opportunities, a Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to grab the mic and be on the air. A Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world all year round. Be an on-air personality, talk show producer, or YouTube, TV, podcast editor. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Welcome to Veterans Air. Let me start that again. Welcome to Veterans Air, the Veterans Hour, your source for news, talk, and uncensored commentary for the veteran community here on the Lone Star Community Radio. I'm your host, Douglas B., and you can listen to us live the first Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m., or you can check us out at veteransair.us. You can listen to us here at 106.1 and 104.5, Facebook Live, YouTube, and wherever you get your fine podcasts. As always, we're going to start with a little housekeeping today. You can contact Veterans Air through the website at www.veteransair.us or leave us a message, or better yet, contact us in the studio on our Google phone, 936-344-3083. Today's show is entitled The IRS and Your CPA. And there's a lot of information that we're going to try to get out here as quickly as we possibly can. And to help me do this, I've invited my good friend Stephen Zogal from Spring Tax Advisors back here. Hey, Dick, could you get Dick on the phone? We're going to talk specifically about what the IRS is doing. Yep, I'm ready for him. What the IRS is doing and what you should be doing, because that's what the Constitution says. One ringy-dingy, two ringy-dingies.
Hey, how you doing?
Stephen, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. Excuse me. We're going to talk today about the IRS skirting U.S. law and making up their own rules. And I want you to take us through this at the 30,000-foot level of what's happening, why it's happening, why it shouldn't happen, and what we can do about it.
All right. Well, first, I mean, when you talk about the IRS, you know, nothing with the IRS, as we know to date, is fast. When it comes to the IRS, you know, things move very slowly.
Except if you owe them money.
Well, yeah, except whenever you owe them. And whenever the government comes knocking. But basically, this story, I mean, it starts back to 1998, whenever Congress passed the IRS Reform Act. And when they did that, there was a section of the code of the IRC that covered 6304 was the section, and it was to put in protections for taxpayers against unfair collection practices. Well,
So this is a law.
Well, the law states specifically underneath Section 6304, and I'm going to read this verbatim. Okay? Under Title 26 U.S. Code, Section 6304, Fair Tax Collection Practices, A, communications with the taxpayer without prior consent of the taxpayer given directly to the Secretary or the express permission of a court of competent jurisdiction, the Secretary may not communicate with a taxpayer in connection with the collection of any unpaid tax, one, at an unusual time or place, or a time or place known or which should be known to be inconvenient to the taxpayer. And then two, if the Secretary knows the taxpayer is represented by any person authorized to practice before the IRS with respect to such unpaid tax and has knowledge of or can readily ascertain such person's name and address, unless such person fails to respond within the reasonable period of time to a communication from the Secretary, or unless such person consents to direct communication with the taxpayer. And I'm going to stop right there because that's the most important part. It does go on into to a few other things, but that's the subject here.
So,
without
if
what it boils down
let
to,
me interrupt you.
Yeah.
If I understand this correctly, the IRS shouldn't be contacting the taxpayer if that taxpayer is represented by somebody like you.
Correct.
Okay. So I get a letter from the
that is-
IRS. You should get a letter from the IRS.
Correct. That is black and white what it says and states, right? So let's fast forward to today. Here we are almost 2 decades later. And the past 2 months, I recently came across a case against my desk where I was representing a taxpayer in an offer and compromise. Well, in the offer and compromise process, the IRS is supposed to send you out a what's known as a 30-day letter, collection due process hearing. Basically, that you have the right to a collection due process hearing if you respond within 30 days. Now, I don't know about you, but when was the last time anybody responded to anything that in the mail within the 30-day period?
Well, you're lucky
And
if you
that's-
get the mail.
Well, right, within a 30-day period, right? Because of the shortcomings of the United States Post Office. But also, it's also the shortcomings of the IRS and whenever they send out the notices. But we'll get more into that. Now, in this 30 days, if you respond back within 30 days, you get what's known as a collection due process hearing. And you can request that on a Form 12153 to the IRS. And in this hearing, you can bring up the offer and compromise. Now, what that effectively does do for the taxpayer is it allows them an opportunity to be heard in front of the IRS on an offer and compromise. And if they reject, well, you have the right to appeal all the way up into tax court. So somewhere along this process between 1998 and now, the IRS has made an internal policy when it comes to issuing out that 30-day letter that we're not going to, if there's a representative assigned, we're not going to send out a letter to the representative. We're only going to send out a notice to the taxpayer. And if the taxpayer doesn't respond within 30 days, all well, they lose their right to a collection due process hearing. And then, because they lost the right to collection due process hearing, what we're doing to circumvent the taxpayer's rights regarding within Section 6304, where the representative is supposed to get a notice, will never be heard up in tax court. So the issue is never heard. They don't even get the opportunity, the chance, the light of day to argue.
Well, what happens What happens if you don't get the letter? If you get the letter after that 30 days is up, what's your recourse? What can we do?
Well, nothing. You can ask for an equivalent hearing after the 30 days, but it doesn't give you access to go to tax court on the decision.
Well, wait a second. Wait a second. You may not know this, but this is the United States of America. We have the right as Americans to due process. This sounds like to me that the IRS is circumventing that due process. But that's
well,
just
they
me.
are.
That just ain't right.
You would think, no, and you would think that, call back to, no taxation without representation,
I'm pretty sure that we fought a war on that.
We did. In fact, here's a little fact for you. We've had taxes ever since the birth of the nation in one form or the other. But, we were being taxed by the British without, being representative. You had the Sugar Act, where there was tax on, luxury goods like wine and coffee. And then you had the Stamp Act where they had tax on, government documents, legal documents, newspapers. Then you had the Townshend Act, levy duties on imported goods, and then the Tea Act, and that's where we got the Boston Tea Party, right?
Yeah.
And we got tired of the fact that we weren't being represented. Well, here we have where Congress represented us and said, okay, we're not going to allow this no more. And then a rogue entity, the IRS, decided, well, we can circumvent that.
By creating an internal policy. And this was a good
new internal policy.
This has been going on for almost 3 decades. It's 2026.
Since since it was approved, the act was passed in 1998. So
98, yeah. 2008, 2018, 2020, almost 3 decades.
Yeah, almost 3 decades, yeah.
Let me tell you something that just recently happened, my dear listeners. So, Stephen's my accountant. He does my personal taxes, and he also does the taxes for my nonprofit, dragon6.org. Now, this year, I told Stephen, why don't you go ahead and file an extension for me so I can get my act together here. And he did. He filed that extension. You did file the extension, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he filed that extension, and I figure I'm golden. I don't have to worry about this because I have Stephen, who owns the Spring Tax Advisors, is my accountant. He's represented me as my accountant. He's on the power of attorney to represent Dragon 6 as its accountant. I get a letter in the mail yesterday, and it was dated February. I get a letter in the mail saying that my taxes for Dragon 6 are due. And don't forget, I got that letter. Stephen didn't get that letter. I see something for the IRS, and I just throw it in the mail pile. I'll get to it next month when I pay my bills. That just ain't right. What about all of us that travel for work? We might not get a letter for 30, 40 days before we get back to the house and, pick up our mail. This is just wrong, Stephen, on so many levels. This is just wrong. I can see where taxpayers are being screwed. Not just veterans, but everybody.
They've been being screwed. When you get to a point where you have an entity like the IRS that creates internal policies solely for the purpose that you will never get your day in court, and then put a timeline on something as short as 30 days by mail, and then you expect there to be not an uprising on this is crazy. But they've been being able to keep it quiet because very few people know about it.
Well, I'll tell you why there's not an
uprising. And because it never gets its day in court, and because it never gets its day in court, the issue is never heard to be addressed by the court.
I'll tell you why there's not an uprising. Is because nobody knows this. I didn't know this, and I consider myself a well-informed businessman. I didn't know this. So if I didn't know this, I'm sure that there's millions of tax-paying Americans that don't know this. I mean, here we have somebody who's worked his entire life, has obeyed the rules, has filled out his taxes and paid them religiously every single year. And he made a mistake one year because he ran out of fingers and toes to count on. He made a mistake. So he'll get a letter in the mail from the IRS, and he might not see that for 30 or 40 days. And now he's screwed, and he can get fines and levies and all these other things happening to him just because he didn't reply to this letter?
Right. Yep. And keep in mind, that representation case, that I still have ongoing. It is a case that I have ongoing. This guy, he travels for work all everywhere. This is specifically why on the power of attorney you're able to, but yes, your representative can receive your IRS notices and communications because exactly that situation. You have a situation where the taxpayer travels or for work, and they might be out of state, away from their primary home for such and such a time, and they may not get that notice, and therefore, what happens to their representation? What happens to their due process? Is it right that we circumvent those rights just because of their work environment? There's no part of me that thinks that is right, or that it will ever be right for the IRS to circumvent due process rights. And this isn't the first time. This is just one of the many issues that have been going on within the IRS. But to say it short and sweetly, whenever you have a government entity who can create an internal policy and basically say, well, that internal policy overrides what Congress passed, there's a big issue.
I think you're understating a big issue. Now, I fully expect you, Spring Tax Advisors, as my duly appointed tax representative, to work on my behalf to ensure that the IRS doesn't screw me. But here's the bigger question. What are you going to do to stop this practice from happening?
Well, I tell you what we have so far done. And it's been a lot, and it's been an expense that, our business has taken on so handedly. We've sent every member of Congress and the House a letter in regards to the practice. Every single one of them. We did not skip anyone. We sent them a letter telling them what the issue was and how the IRS has been circumventing due process rights. And some by email, some by snail mail, because they didn't have a legitimate box where it could go to, where we thought that they would read it. And so far, pretty much the response has been, well, the taxpayer is not in our the taxpayers are not in our district. Please come again. Or try representative in your tax area. But what you got to realize is that the letter had nothing to do with the case that I'm disputing. It has to deal with internal policy of the IRS that affects the due process and goes against law passed by Congress for every U.S. taxpayer. this should be an issue for every U.S. citizen, no matter where they are at and what state they're located.
Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do something for me. As you know, Veterans Air is a very popular veterans radio program. We're rated #1 in our slot for Tuesdays, first Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. And we have 6 listeners. We've gone up. We have 6 listeners. I would like you to draft a letter written by any IRS taxpayer that we would write this letter complaining about this. I'd like you to draft that letter. And if you draft that letter, I will get that letter out to all of our listeners and who their representatives are so they can send it to. But if you write the words, I'll make sure that gets out to our listeners. Are you listening to me, listeners? I'm going to have a project for you when Stephen writes this letter. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah. We can take care of that very easily. And we will.
We're going to do that. And, I think that this is important enough that I need to put this on our website and our Facebook page. We need to get this message out. I'm just sitting here thinking about, Facebook Reels are dangerous things because I'll fall down that reel hole and be watching all these reels all night long. And one of the reels that I see pop up reoccurring over and over again is from SB Lawn Mowing. They go around and they just help out residents and mow their yards and trim and everything. And they're always older people or disadvantaged people or people that have medical issues, and they're just taking care of the yards for them. And I'm thinking this, these people that SB Lawn Care is taking care of, I bet you they also have problems with their tax and that they don't know this is happening. And they're going to wake up, some 87-year-old woman's going to wake up one morning, put on her dressing gown, go to make coffee, and they knock on the door, and it's the sheriff repossessing her house just because she didn't know. That's wrong. That's wrong on so many levels. It's not even laughable.
Well, no, it's definitely not laughable whenever they can circumvent also the due process rights whenever there's a representative involved. I mean, we're talking about, tax law is one of the most complicated laws out there. It changes year by year, updates. And then you talk about, 75,000 pages long now today that we have to navigate. And it's unfathomable, really, that we couldn't create a more simplistic system that would be easier for the average taxpayer to understand, or that in order to do, taxes, you would need somebody as educated as I am to even get this paperwork out in the mail, or the fact that we don't even educate our youth in our public school systems on taxation, and it's been around since 1913. I mean, are we really setting up our next generation for success here, or is Congress at this point just acting in its own best interest and fluffing up the tax code to the point where, you know what, it no longer benefits the average U.S. citizen?
I want you to think about this. Now, I have a very simple personal taxes, very simple. The federal government already knows how much money I've gotten this year. They pay me Social Security. They know how much I got. Got VA disability. They know how much I got. Why do I need to file that tax to give them the same numbers that they gave me? And then calculate it. I can't add 2 plus 2 and come up with 4. That's why I like the new math where 2 plus 2 could be 5. This is just wrong the way our tax system is. And as I've said this on the radio many, many times, I am a constitutional anarchist. I believe in burning it all down and starting over again with the Constitution. Sorry, I'm looking around to make sure the DEA and FCC is not coming for me. They'll shut me down one day. But seriously, I once photographed the New York Public Library. And I'm in there and I'm photographing all these books and yada, yada, yada. And there's bookcases full of them. Same looking book, full of them. I got curious and I went and I pulled one of the binders to see what it was. It's the U.S. tax code. We're talking
Yes,
bookshelves
sir.
from floor to ceiling, and there's like 20 of them. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And it is, and it takes someone like me who's nerdy enough to go, all through that, and just to even make sure that the average U.S. citizen is represented. Let me tell you something. Back in 1913, our average tax return, including instructions, you want to know how many pages that was?
Thrill me.
It was 4 pages long, including the instruction page.
Wow.
Just 4 pages. Today, a simple return, here's statistics for you, okay? Today, a simple return, just a single filer with 1 W-2. Nothing else going on, is 2 to 10 pages.
Well, last year when you did my taxes, it was what, 28 pages? Because I had sold the property?
The average family return is 20 to 50 pages, meaning the average family with children, homeowners, those are often 20 to 50 pages, and I can speak from the experience, the truth of that matter. And then whenever you get into complex returns, where you may have like a high earner, those can easily exceed 100 plus pages. I've done returns that were 600 pages in length. And let me tell you what a nightmare that is. We're at a stage here also within our own industry where, people like me, there's a 3-year decade gap, meaning there is a shortage of tax accountants in 3 decades in the doing, that there's not enough of me to go around. And it's causing, wages for accountants to increase, right? Because scarcity promotes higher compensation, right? But what it also does is that there's not enough ratio of me to go around to service the average citizen, right? Because the statistics don't work out. How many of the common...
What about all these HR Block and TurboTax and Jackson Hewitt?
I mean, there's not enough of them to go around either.
Damn.
So we're getting to a point here where it's critical, a certain stage where, CPAs, EAs, and even the tax return preparers, we're outnumbered greatly in the industry in comparison to the workload that we have for filing. And now, granted, some returns, now can be done with software, such as TurboTax if it's just a simple W-2. But a lot of people are turning to those softwares without the knowledge and understanding of the complexities of the tax code, and they'll get underhanded, there. And so, I don't recommend ever to do taxes by yourself, ever. but I mean, also on that subject, prior to 1913, look, from the 1700s to through 1930 through, and I did pull the dates on that. We had tariffs. For context, tariffs was established back in 1789 through basically we had also tariffs through 1934 on some products. Tariffs have always been around, but it was majority it was around late 1700s to the 1800s until we got to 1913, whenever the 16th Amendment allowed for taxation to pretty much switch from a consumption tax to to what it is today.
Yeah, here's the bottom line, Stephen, is taxes are a necessary evil. We like the things that taxes bring us. We like roads. We like infrastructure. We like police forces and firemen and all those things, schools, all those things that taxes go into. And I think the average American says, okay, that's fine. But today, that's not the way taxes are being used, or primarily they're being used. You can't turn on the news without seeing another fraud case of Medicaid, Medicare, hospice, child care, all these millions and billions of dollars being wasted, being thrown away, or aid being given to foreign countries, grants being given. I mean, I don't give a damn whether or not a subsidizing taxi driver wears shoes or sandals. I couldn't care less. And I think America feels the same way. The average American feels the same way. We have to pay taxes, but we need to get them under control. We need to be able to go, okay, I made this much, and I'm going to take 1%, 2%, 3%, and give it to the government. Do you happen to know how much we give to the government of our paycheck?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We give a lot, let me tell you. And it's a tax bracket, okay? So it's relative to income as to percentage, and not everyone is taxed the same. So, but however, it's a pretty penny. Let me tell you. Once you get past and you look at all the taxes that we pay, the sales tax, property tax, fuel tax, and then everything else, estate tax, and then you get to income tax, and you look at everything as a whole, right? And then you think to yourself, okay, well, we supposedly have representation, but whenever you see an issue like this and you go, wait a minute, is this really taxation with representation? And
I don't feel represented.
No. I don't feel represented either. Whenever you have a government entity that can circumvent due process rights, even when there's a representative involved, there should be alarm bells happening right now as to the way that our revenue system is set up. And not only that, but there should be alarm bells to Congress that whenever you have an entity, a government entity, who thinks that the law doesn't apply to them, but yet we're held, our feet as American taxpayers are held, their feet to the fire, essentially, to get their taxes correct. And we're held to the standard of, well, we must obey the law, but then the IRS, they get a free jailbreak. What is going on here? At some point, we have to ask ourselves, the very question is, should we allow the madness to continue?
We have to get a handle on it.
Right. Where do we draw the line? are we asleep at the wheel?
For the
And
most
when
part,
did we
yes.
wake up?
For the most part, Americans are asleep at the wheel, and it's really not their fault. Um, if
No, that's
we
the fault of that's the fault and the sole fault
of our
of our
representatives.
educational. Well, not only that, but our educational system.
Well, now I date myself. I graduated high school in 1982, and the courses that we had back in my era are a hell of a lot different than what we have now. But even in my era, we didn't have a class on how to fill out your taxes. We had classes in home ec on how to, make a budget, how to balance your checkbook, things of that nature, but nothing about how to fill out a tax form. Now, my father, in his later years, he went back to school, became a CPA, and he did business taxes for people. And when you're in business, if you're running a business, you should not be doing your taxes by yourself. Unless you're a tax expert, a tax expert, you should hire somebody to do your taxes. I knew when I started Dragon 6 that I didn't even have enough knowledge to even start thinking about taxes. And I have a good treasurer. Jim's a good guy. He's a good treasurer. He's a smart guy. That's why I hired you. And now the IRS knows, has been notified in writing that you, Spring Tax Advisors, is my tax representative. You're my preparer, you're my representative. They have all the paperwork they need to include a power of attorney. And they just cut you out of the loop. What do they think? I'm not going to read the letter? Do they think I'm not going to call you immediately once I get this letter? Because this, to me, and here comes let me put my conspiracy hat on. This seems to me that the IRS is willfully taking away people's right to due process so they can seize more money in fines and levies and property. That's what it sounds like to me. If
Yes,
it sounds like it to you,
it's been a war. It's been a war on the American taxpayer. There is no doubt about it. For the past, ever since 1998, they just completely said, you know what, Congress doesn't matter. And if they can say that and get away with it, and people be totally blindfolded from it, we need to wake people up. This is a very big issue that needs to be addressed, and the reins of the IRS needs to be reined back in, and common sense needs to start being common sense again.
well, that's something that we're way short of in this country. Or no, let me rephrase that. That's something that we're way short of in the representatives that we send to Washington. And since we're about to celebrate our Independence Day, let me remind everybody listening to me that the people in Washington are not our leaders. The people in Washington don't get to go there and do whatever it is they decide that they're going to do. Their job is to go to Washington and do what we, the people that elected them, told them to do. And whenever they stop doing that, we need to vote them out of office. And that's on all levels, from the federal government all the way down to the local level. We have local elections coming up here in 3 weeks. Did you know that?
Yep.
And just like everything else, I vote every single time because I'm an American. I fought and bled for it, so I'm voting every single time. And there's some of y'all out there that are currently sitting in the local, state, and federal governments that ain't going to be there anymore because I'm not voting for you because you're not doing what I tell you to. And I encourage everybody else to do the same. We need to, Stephen, I think this is the tip of the iceberg. If we dug deeper, I think we can find a hell of a lot more that the IRS is doing against the American people.
Well, you know, speaking of that, I have a story for you. You ready for story time?
I'm listening.
All right. Story time. Mason, there was a tax court case called Mason versus Commissioner back in 2021. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Let me tell you what.
You're the only geek that follows tax law, you know. Just so you know.
I know, but let me tell you, I do kind of geek out on this stuff because I find it all very interesting. You know, part of the reason why I love what I do is because, one, I don't like tax. And then, two, I don't like the IRS. And three, I do distrust our government and what it has become. Because they haven't done anything to restore the American taxpayers' faith into the system. So let me tell you about this.
Welcome to constitutional anarchism.
Yeah, let me tell you about this. So, Mason versus Commissioner filed May 20th, 2021. And I'm going to read the case summary. The taxpayers who claimed they were unable to pay back taxes submitted an offer in compromise. Now, an offer in compromise, for those who don't know, is where you owe some debt to the IRS, and then you say, okay, I just don't have it. What you asking for, I just don't have it. Can we settle this? So that's what offer in compromise is. So in this case, which they submitted the offer in compromise, which the IRS routed to its centralized offer in compromise unit. But where after the submission, another part of the IRS thereafter began sending collection notices. Now, for reference, whenever you submit an offer in compromise, the collection notices are supposed to be put on. Okay. The taxpayers requested a hearing with the IRS appeals office, and where the offer and compromise unit did not consider the taxpayer's offer, meaning they received it, but they didn't even consider it. And get this, they returned it back to the taxpayer. The offer and compromise, they returned it back to them, and the IRS appeals also did not consider the merits of the offer and compromise. The IRS Appeals Office abused its discretion by failing to review the offer and compromise on the merits of Section 7122, permitted a taxpayer to make an offer and compromise, and gave the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue discretion to compromise the tax liability. So they submitted the offer. The IRS didn't even review it. Didn't even consider it. They turned it back away. And this is not the only things that are going on within the IRS. And by the way, the taxpayers won that case up against the tax court. Did rule in their favor because they had a right to file the offer and compromise process. The IRS just simply didn't review the offer and compromise and then sent it on back to the taxpayer and acted like, well, it meant nothing to them.
Because the IRS holds the Holy Grail. You don't ever go against the IRS because they hold more power than you do. But we're going to change that. You and I, we're going to change that. And I'm including you, my fine listeners. I'm going to recruit you to change this also. Because this is the first thing that we need to do. We need to protect ourselves. And that's a bad thing when you need to protect yourself from your own government. We fought a war for that. It's called the Revolutionary War. and protect ourselves from our own government. This is concerning, and there's a lot more that we can talk about that this, isn't there? So, I think
there's a lot.
I think what we
There's a
need
lot
to do.
more cases and instances that rival some of this other stuff that you would find baffling.
Well, if I'm a taxpayer, an individual or a business, and I'm receiving these letters and don't know what to do with them, what's the number for Spring Tax Advisors?
Well, the number for Spring Tax Advisors, let me get that for you.
You don't know your own phone number?
Well, we have a few phone numbers.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. In case you didn't know, that they've opened another office. There's one in the Woodlands, and there's another one now in Cypress, right? Spring Creek, Cypress.
Correct. We have we have a location in Cypress called Cypress Tax Advisors. Spring Tax Advisors, you can Google it, and our number, just in case you need it, is 346-828-9797.
So, if you're having problems with the IRS, I want you to call Stephen. Stephen takes care of me, takes care of my nonprofit, takes care of the VFW. He is a veteran, almost. He's Air Force, so that's almost like being a veteran. But he is the smartest guy that I know when it comes to tax stuff. If you're having a problem or you think you're having problems, it behooves you to reach out to the subject matter expert. He's going to give you advice. He's going to tell you what to do. He's going to tell you, come on in, let me sell you something because you need more help than I can give you on the phone. But what advice that he gives you, what he tells you to do, is ironclad. It really has. He's been doing my taxes for 3 years now? I got 5 minutes? I only got 5 minutes.
I believe so.
I'm going to have to cut you off because I only have 5 minutes left on the broadcast, and I got to do the VFW's Americans 250th anniversary. But pencil me in
Absolutely.
because we're going to do a podcast. We're going to continue this on with a podcast. So pencil me in. And
Okay.
I know that you got a busy day, and I thank you for taking the time to talk to our listeners about the IRS and how they may be getting screwed.
Well, yes, and we need to talk about it and bring greater awareness so that we can bring a resolution. But I will say this, anybody should, and everybody on this issue should be reaching out to their representative on this matter, because if we have an organization like the IRS who thinks that it can circumvent the law while holding everyone else accountable around it, where's the justice in that?
Well, that's why you're going to write the letter, and I'm going to get my 6 listeners to send it out to their representatives. Again, thanks, Stephen. Let's do lunch real soon, and it's your turn to buy, by the way.
Roger that.
All right. Now, I got to do this. Got to do this America's 250th anniversary. The VFW and the American Legion Post 411 have partnered this year to bring you America's 250th anniversary celebration. Now, you've been to the 2 events that I've done in the past, the hot dog events, the turkey events. You've been to them. You've been to the VFW events. You've been to the American Legion events, their barbecue that they held a couple of months ago up in Willis. This is going to be bigger than all of them. We, the members of the American Legion, its auxiliary, VFW 4709, its auxiliary, we have partnered together to bring Independence Day to Conroe. It's going to be at the VFW Hall, and we're going to start it at 2:50 p.m., so America's 250th at 2:50, And here's just some of the things that's going to go on. We have live music this year. Yes, we have a band, a good band. We're going to dedicate a Liberty Tree. We're going to have free hot dogs and soft drinks as usual. We're going to have Fry Daddy's food truck there. So if you wanted loaded fries, Fry Daddy's got them. You want some catfish balls? Fry Daddy's got them. We have K-Star's prize van on site that's going to be giving out prizes. We have a inflatable tomahawk throw competition for 12 and under. And get this, the grand prize for this tomahawk throw for the kids is a hoverboard. That's right, I got them a hoverboard. We have a cornhole tournament. Grand prize, limited edition, red, white, and blue professional cornhole setup. We're going to have a pool tournament for the adults also. Silent auctions, door prizes, and tons of games for the kids. We even have Uncle Sam coming to sign autographs with the kids. Well, he'll sign an autograph for you. And we have much, much more because this thing is growing like there's no tomorrow. If you want to be part of what's sure to be the event of the year, go visit vfw4709.org/events and donate. We're also looking for sponsors. How would you like to have 50 30-second ads on K-Star from June 21st through the 4th of July? You can have that if you're one of our sponsors. Yes, you can. This is not just give us money. This is we're actually doing some advertising for you with this year. If you have any questions, please contact me, Douglas B., at 936-344-3083, and I'll send you the sponsorship agreement. This is, I want everybody in Conroe to come to the VFW. We have the VFW, we have the parking lots, we're going to have plenty of parking. We even have Candy Cane Park. And we have a cooling tent, because I know it's going to be July 4th and it's going to be hot. We have a misting tent set up, so don't you worry about it. The VFW and the American Legion cordially invite you to come celebrate Independence Day with us. We want you there. Okay, so what is happening this month? We know that we have Mother's Day coming up on the 10th, so don't forget your mom. She loves you. On May 25th at 7 a.m., it's the 2026 Murphy Challenge with Congressman Morgan Luttrell at Candy Cane Park. That's directly behind the VFW. This year, your VFW 4709 is the official sponsor of the Murphy Challenge. So come on out for that. And don't forget, we have Memorial Day coming up. I need to do a Memorial Day show. Okay, we need to get out of here because Dick's can get off the air. You'll want to tune in on June 2nd at 1 p.m. for our next show. We'll be talking about all things with Independence Day. As we leave, I want to leave you this song by our friend Sailor Jerry. You can go download it at veteransair.us or on iTunes. And while we're listening, let us remember our brothers and sisters in uniform that today are standing in harm's way for our freedoms and our liberty. If you are wearing the uniform, if you have worn the uniform, I want to tell you thank you. I want to tell you I'm proud of you. And until next month, stay safe and stay vigilant.
You packed your bags and shut the door. You crossed the sea to fight a war. You didn't know just what would happen to ya. Stepped in the dirt, boots on the ground, and gunfire was the only sound. And to yourself you whispered hallelujah. every day and every night. You walk the walk, you fight the fight. You never saw the end inside, now did ya? The days are washing our hairs of red, the blood, the mud, too many dead. Your weary soul was crying hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Too late to help you hear a shot. You know you're in a deadly spot. You never thought the day would come, now did ya? Your brother falls down to the ground. The enemy is all around, and from your lips you scream a hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You fought the fight till it was done. You have the strength to carry on. You thought it'd be much better back home, did ya? You try each day, keep pushing through, but the battle lives inside